Hello. This morning I had a very strange experience. I have two passports because I am a national of the United Kingdom and the United States of America, a citizen of both countries. And I needed to get my new American passport and myself a member of what's called the Global Entry Scheme, which means you don't have to wait in enormous lanes and lines when you arrive from a long flight at JFK. I live very near there. To get through passport control and immigration. So I went along to JFK. You don't have to make an appointment for this. And so when I arrived, because normally when I arrive, I'm about to fly to England or fly to Israel or fly to South Africa or somewhere. And you know what it's like getting to an airport. You're worried about being in the right place and getting there in time, etc. But this time is very strange. And in fact, in my entire life, and I spend a lot of my time flying around the world, I've never had this before. To actually stroll into an airport and I'm under no pressure. I can just turn up. And so that's exactly what I did. And as soon as I got to the door, there was a fellow standing in there shouting to a whole load of people and holding up a belt. He said, "Did anybody lose a belt? Lose a belt?" I think it was actually might have been a strap actually from a lady's handbag or something. And of course, whoever had dropped it was in such a rush, like I and everybody else normally is at airports to fly from, or to zip from one terminal to the other, that they hadn't noticed they'd dropped it, and certainly weren't going to go back for it. So I strolled in, and everybody was so manically rushing from A to B. And when I left, it was the same thing. It was strange. It was really great therapy. I think, if you really want to enjoy yourself, just go to Heathrow Airport one day or JFK or one of these mega busy airports and just walk about. And don't have to get onto the plane and look at all the stressed and other people who are rushing about. But nobody knew that they dropped a belt because they were just too busy. Stuff happens when you're very busy, when life takes you, so it gives you a good shake and forces you to dash from one place from A to B. Then you just don't know what's going on. You don't notice what's going on in your life. And I remember there's a story I came across in a book, a history book, many, many years ago. During the First World War, just north of South Africa, on the west coast, there's a large country called Namibia. And there was a ship that was torpedoed by a German U-boat, and there was only one survivor. It's his story. He writes the story autobiographically in the book. He managed somehow to swim to the shore, but it was quite a long swim, and he was completely and totally exhausted from the swim. He managed to crawl onto the beach, and he lay there. Now the sun, it's desert. Maybe it's mostly, incredible desert, incredible heat, was baking him. He had no strength to move, and he just lay there, being dehydrated, literally toasting to death. His eyes became all clogged up with pus, and could hardly open them. His mouth totally dry, and he had no strength to move. He became aware of two shadowy figures standing over him, and if he forced one eye open a little bit, he could see it was two bush people, they're called, a husband and a wife, and they found this fellow lying on the beach. Later on, when he learned their language, he was able to reconstruct what happened, and apparently the husband and the wife were having a discussion as to whether there was any point in trying to save this fellow. The husband felt that the fellow was too far gone and there was no point, but the wife, like most women are more kind anyway, said it was worth trying. So as he lay there in the sand, the fellow, they're hunter-gatherers, this bushman, they're tiny people, they're pygmies, took a spear, he carried a spear, and he jabbed it into the sand right next to the fellow's head, and then it made a sort of chink noise, and then chink noise through the sand. He did this 3 or 4 times, and then there was a clink. So he digs with the spear, makes a little hole, goes down about 6 or 8 inches, and he finds a clam, a large clam. So he takes this out with the sharp edge of the spear point. He cuts the clam in two, and inside is of course the shellfish. The strange thing about the shellfish inside these clams is that their body takes the salt water, which of course is nobody can drink, and turns it into fresh water. Being 8 or inches or a foot under the sand, it was kept cold. And so the little fellow pushes this guy's head up and takes this. It's a cup. The shellfish, if you open it, it's exactly the shape of a cup, and it's got cold, clean, fresh water in it. And he pours it into the fellow's mouth, and there's about say half a pint in there because it's big things. And then he does the same thing again with his spear, ching, till he hears a chink noise. Digs out another shellfish, opens it up, another half pint of cool water, pours it into, and he kept doing this until he had completely rehydrated the fellow, was able to help him sit up, and then he scooped out the shellfish itself and gave him that to eat. The fellow was dying because he was dehydrated and he was starving, and he was surrounded by it all the time. So sometimes you're too busy to see what's going on, and sometimes you don't know how to look to see what's going on. And it's a thought that popped into my mind because of obviously this time of year when it's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, etc. It's a time of reflection. And I was thinking back to all the things that happened to me in the last year. And some of them were really big. I mean, there's lots of big events, but we forget. We forget so easily. I remember when I was in Toronto, there was the World Shabbat Olami, when they tried to get communities all over the world to keep Shabbat together. And I was in Toronto when, if you remember, or do you remember what happened to Shabbat Olami last year, around about October, November? That's when there was this terrorist attack in the Pittsburgh synagogue, when a neo-Nazi burst in with an AR-15 rifle killing Jews. And there was another case like that in America. A year it's not a long time, but it's a huge amount of time if you're so busy like all those people at the airport, or if you don't know how to look. And I was thinking about how my childhood, my father, when I was 8, he had his first heart attack. He had 21 altogether. And he was dead 3 times, and they brought him back 3 times. And his 21st heart attack got my dad. And when this came into my mind about 2-3 years ago, when I had a pain in my chest, which turned out to be a blocked artery, which these days a simple stent is able to remedy and cure, I thought back, suddenly just came back, came tumbling back to me, how from the age of 8 till 18, that was 10 years, our whole life was rotated around the fact my father was he was an invalid. He never worked again. He never could work. He had a very, very bad case of heart disease. And thinking about that, suddenly, wow, I'd forgotten that. How can you forget something that big? And when you live in those sorts of conditions, as I'm sure many of the people listening or watching this will maybe have similar situations going on. And the thing is that you tend to not notice. At least you don't notice, or you notice the bad stuff. There's often lots of good stuff there as well. Also experiences, also some laughter that surprisingly pops up, and you can carry with you into your life. It's important not just to think of the bad stuff. It's important to think of the good stuff and remember the good stuff, or see the good stuff when it's happening. But because we're so busy rushing about like the people at JFK or Heathrow, or even if they're not rushing about, we don't know where to look. Sometimes we only see the bad stuff, and we miss completely the fact that there's lots of good stuff surrounding us as well. So you need 2 people with a spear. Well, not actually a spear. In fact, if you come across 2 people with a spear, I suggest you get as far away from there as possible. But seriously, you need people who know how to look, to make you stop, make you think, and maybe sometimes look at things a little bit differently and see that, you know what, there's lots of good stuff there as well, if you just know where to look. And maybe there are some people out there, good people, who can show it to you and show you how to look, so that you get something that refreshes you and gives that little extra boost, particularly when you feel yourself being all dehydrated and sucked out of you. There might be good stuff there as well. Make sure you get somebody to help you to look and see. Until you find that, maybe have a little look yourself. In a tough month that's just gone by, or a tough 2 months, or maybe 6 months, or a year, what was the good stuff? I wonder if you could even make a list. What happened that was really good last year? I bet you'd be surprised when you start to think. You'll find your list is actually surprisingly long. Bye.